Hello and welcome to our first, and I'm afraid are going to be quite a series of coronavirus crisis discussions and web chats. We're talking about the role of technology in helping companies survive. We have Martin BELLIN, CEO and founder of BELLIN, who's going to talk about these problems and the issues and the solutions. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Jack. Nice talking to you, even though we have difficult times right now.
No good. Okay, and we're going to open with something that we need to talk about, which is the problems that we're facing. Can you talk us through this and let's interact a bit on how you see the problems from the corporate treasury point of view?
Yeah, we do really face different problems. Let's start with the top one is currency volatility, which I guess is going to increase, and all the predictions will lose their value, which we had before the crisis. I guess the world after the crisis will be a different one. I believe we all agree on that topic. And we don't know exactly how the coronavirus is going to impact the different economies around the world. Currently, we have no idea how badly, for example, South Africa or India are going to be hit, or to which extent the US is going to be able to deal with this outbreak right now we see in New York or in Los Angeles. And that's going to influence the effect on the currency market. So nobody really knows what's going to happen. We just have to be prepared for higher volatilities. And that is, again, an increase to be prepared, an increase in the challenge to be prepared and to execute accurate forecasts, I guess.
But the issue I'm getting from other corporate treasuries is that it's global cash visibility, global liquidity is their problem. They're not quite sure where they are.
Yeah, well, I guess cash visibility has always been key, and I believe that hasn't really changed. But too many companies which have been able to afford inefficiencies, to say so, in their global visibility, they are not going to learn that they have to pay much more attention on it. This is combined with technology. Global visibility without proper technology is impossible, in my opinion. The better we can use our systems from everywhere, and that's coming together with this visibility part, because we have to use it in every different location, the less impact of, for example, home office and distributed teams we're going to see. If Treasury was not core discipline before the crisis, it will definitely be one afterwards, in my opinion. The companies who have technology solutions already implemented will have an easier time ensuring proper cash visibility and control over it right now. So technology is key. Without key, I won't have visibility. Without visibility, I won't make it through the crisis. That's my humble guess.
Absolutely. And the market volatility is causing a real problem in terms of some of the banks funding the debt covenants. How are you seeing that coming together?
You know, debt covenants can become critical because loans and facilities, which are key to refinance the company through these dark times, are dependent on these covenants. And due to this disruptiveness of the crisis, even more companies which have been pretty healthy before will experience that they may not be able to keep their promises on profit and on their balance sheets right now. And they will need cash to an extent they may not be used to, and they never expect it. So especially for those who have been feeling pretty comfortable, this can really be a boomerang which is going to hit them hard. And visibility, again, is key. If I don't know the covenants, what can I do?
Absolutely, but there is also some discussion about the lack of financial instruments. Are we needing new financial instruments?
I don't believe that we need new financial instruments. There are tons of instruments available in the market. But again, it comes back, in my opinion, to technology. Then for the companies still using simple technology and processes, a crisis like this can make it very difficult to gather all the information required to get an overview of all the instruments in place already. The time it takes to gather that data can also be crucial and a very painful element. If you don't mind, I can tell you a story. I can share a story with you. I remember only too well how it feels to be responsible for collecting data from all around the world on short notice. How much cash is available on our current account and in which currency? I was responsible for exactly that question many, many years ago to collect the data.
You're
How
still
much of the
responsible.
yeah, well, I'm responsible in a different position right now.
Yeah.
But when I was working as a treasurer, it was important to know: is cash trapped? Is it pledged? How can we draw down cash from my facilities? What are the conditions? Are they in place still? Are there any assets which we can turn into cash? So this is all important, and just running simple Excel sheets and updating them, probably with a time lag of a week or a month, is not going to help in these times of urgency and of emergency.
But there is a problem missing in this slide, which is we need a new operating model. No longer can we work from the office. We are needing remote working. We're needing to manage the whole problem differently. And that's really what's new about this for me, is this new model needed.
Yeah, I don't believe it's really a new model at all, but it's a new model for many companies from their perspective, because too many are stuck in an idea of treasury operations which comes from the 80s and early 90s probably, but now technology offers much more flexibility, much more insight, much more process sharing, and that's definitely something they should and they now need to adopt.
So let's take your platform, your TM5 platform, and look at how this can be used in today's world, today's coronavirus world. Talk me through the concept behind why you did this, because this is 10 years ago, was it?
Oh, it's more than 10 years, almost 20 years ago already.
Oh, blimey. Okay.
So, yeah, well, we know each other for a very long time, Jack.
Yep. We won't go into that. But the vision of bringing the whole world together is actually where you have always been.
Yes.
And this is now, because I was with this group of corporate treasurers yesterday, and they were talking about having to work from home, but there are some places they had to go into the office or they had to sign something, and it's managing that whole balance. So talk us through the vision and then how it applies to today's problems.
All right, I will try to do so. Everybody builds his own business based on his experience collected. And when I was a treasurer many years ago, I was responsible to prepare the forecasts for multi-billion operations, which was supposed to be presented to the banking consortium because we had some financial difficulties. Same situation, but just a particular one for that company. I very well remembered the workload and how error-prone all these spreadsheets have been I had to prepare. Many things we do today are pointing back and derived from this experience. I believe that we have to provide something to our subsidiaries, to the entire group, which offers and provides value to the local subs. If we provide value to the local subs in their daily operations, they're going to appreciate to use these tools. If they start to use it for their liquidity and cash management, using a proper technology, then there's no waste of time anymore for them to contribute to reporting, to treasury data, and to the content required. And our system right now eliminates laborious data gathering, tedious reporting, and the time-consuming process of consolidation of data, and provides you with the visibility required for more accurate positioning and forecasting on the local, for the subsidiary, and for the global, for the group-wide level. We are all sitting on one virtual desk with that concept and sharing knowledge and sharing data, and everybody has his own responsibility in this concert, in this orchestra of things we have to manage right now. Does this give you an idea?
Yes, but, well, it's not really a but, it's why did you highlight data centralization and netting? I understand the other two, but why those two? Because netting is just a housekeeping function really within the company.
Yes, netting is definitely a housekeeping function, but it's important. And there are too many corporates not using a netting system. Why is this so important? Because it's so easy. There is no reason not to implement a netting system, but if you have implemented a netting procedure, you have total control of the allocation of liquidity throughout the group. Now, if you know exactly where your liquidity sits and where you want to bring it, where you want to take it from, then you can really manage the liquidity over your group, which is essence right now. And that's why netting is such an easy thing to
Okay,
implement and
but
so important.
Another but is you're now having to do this from an awful lot of the people who are using your system are at home or hiding in some place that isn't the office. How does the system like this cope with that new stress? Because it is a stress both in terms of security, in terms of networks and so on.
When we started to implement our system, we have chosen web technology almost 20 years ago, which was brand new at that time. And we haven't picked that technology just because it was new, but because it offers you the ability to work from wherever you are and to do everything you're supposed to do wherever you are. So working in an office is not required. Working on the road is possible. Working in an aircraft would have been possible and is possible right now. I was once asked by a journalist, why have you been able to develop a system which is available on the iPad long before the iPad was invented? And I think that's a good question because we have built systems which are available everywhere. And that's key right now for all the people sitting somewhere in home offices, some in offices, some, I don't know, in different locations. But they're right now working together, virtually together in one group, using one platform and sharing knowledge, sharing processes without any disruption.
But doesn't the new level of working at home or in disparate locations change anything?
For us, it don't change anything if this is in place. For example, take security into account. We have considered that every kind of, for example, payment is processed in the subsidiary under their control. If I want to have a look at it, I can see what they're going to do. I can share processes. They authorize, I send in the central organization. They get limits up to a certain extent. Only if they exceed limits, somebody else is going to be asked to approve payments. This has all been in place already. And now, during the crisis, we see how important that is for everybody because you're not dependent on sitting and sharing a location. You can work together and share process amongst a wide distributed group of people. And that's really key right now for keeping up security and to have reliable process and data available to really be operational.
Okay, so I now understand the sort of platform, the framework for looking at the next piece, which is solutions. Can you start with group-wide cash visibility and how that comes together?
Yeah, I guess we are all in agreement that that a real-time overview of the cash situation is essential right now. The question is, how can we collect the information in the most efficient way? Because this is key right now. The only efficient way forward is to accomplish this task is to create an environment, and I just explained that before, a platform which is used by every finance department in the group to support their local needs. This is key. If they start using it to run the operations, the data we are looking for, which we need, are just sitting there from them on site. And in case it is a web-based application, and this is another part, that's the technology, for everyone with respective access available. So there would be no collection any longer required. Right now, people suffer from collecting all these spreadsheets and consolidating them. That would be completely replaced by using one web-based platform. And as I said, the virtual table we're all working on is right now in place by sharing data, by sharing processes. And the management in the end can really decide whether they transfer cash or not, whether they have cash or not. In case they want to transfer, they can actively do this. They can use in-house banking capabilities right now, and data collection becomes obsolete, replaced by tasks which are really required to guarantee operations and to guarantee cash available.
we are seeing a lot of peculiar situations occurring where, in the Philippines, for example, they basically locked down the local currency. You've got countries like Jordan locking down the whole banking system, etc., etc. And it gives a lot of opportunities for fraud and that sort of thing. Are you introducing anything new, or is it already covered?
Fraud is a very interesting topic because when you approach people and say, well, we have a fraud engine and a fraud protection shield available, which is easy to use and easy to implement, and we say there's a price tag on it, they come back and say, well, we never experienced anything like that. We don't want to pay money for it. That's so expensive. That turns around a bit if you ever face one fraud case. Now we're in a situation of, can we call it turmoil, in a very delicate situation where fraudsters are happy to send around fake messages and to try to use these gaps of information. Yes, we have the right shields in place to protect the company from fraudulent activities. So we can guarantee that everybody who's supposed to receive money is going to receive the money, and everybody who's not supposed to receive money will not receive money. And this is extremely easy to implement. Should have been implemented before. Well, we know better now, but now it's time to act and to protect your company from fraudulent payments and fraudulent activities in Treasury. Fake president is one of the cases, for example.
One of the issues here is, given the current crisis, is cash flow forecasting, and companies, treasurers are asking for much more detail from their subsidiaries and so on. Is that something that you are finding, and how are you preparing for that?
Cash forecasting is essential on the short term and on the midterm right now because nobody knows exactly what is going to happen. The concept we have embedded in our system development is to collect data without sending data, meaning the cash forecasting is prepared by the ones who knows the business in detail. And it's very easy for them to record and to prepare these forecasts for their own business. And consolidation is for free. That's part of the system's architecture, that the system is going to consolidate all these data together. So we have rolled out the system in this, following this idea of load balanced treasury, making people responsible who know exactly what happens. Then we will get our forecast on a very reliable and frequent basis by involving the people who knows best what is going to happen to the domestic business.
Another area that is really in meltdown in some ways is the different forms of funding. For example, commercial paper issuers are having real problems because the spreads are so wide, the markets are not there. The revolver relationship they used to have has now disappeared because the bank has hit problems. How is your system solving things like that? How do we solve things like that?
What we can't do is printing money. But what we can do is giving you an overview of all your assets and all your liabilities to enable you figuring out what kind of possibilities are at hand to generate cash from all kinds of sources. And that gives you an immediate foundation for actions and for possible negotiations to replace instruments which are not going to work any longer. That's what we can do. The management is required to take the right steps, but taking the right steps requires to have all the information at hand, which are of essence. And that's what we can provide in real time without any frictions and thrills.
The same sort of thing applies to hedging, because we're starting to see much more tight regulations in the US and elsewhere. And how can a central treasury system help in this sense? Because that's mostly, as far as I understand it, hedging at that level is very, very detailed. How do you combine the two?
Well, I guess the biggest problem in hedging right now is that most of the hedging programs have been built based on a forecast or a prediction, which is not valid any longer. So the first thing I need to know is to understand which instruments are in place, what are the forwards which I'm bound to. Can we keep them? Do we have to change the strategy because our revenues or our costs are just going to be completely different because the business is gone? So that's the first thing we have to do. And based on this assumption, we got to figure out how we're going to change our strategy in terms of hedging. And if certain instruments are not available anymore in the market, because some markets have just closed down their business, then we have to figure out if there are instruments available which are coming closest to hedge and mitigate the risk. What we can do is we give you immediate overview on your exposure, currency exposure by country, by business unit, by currency, by whatever you need to enable you making the right decisions in these very difficult times.
Another problem, which comes back to the new model required, where people are locked away in their own cells, their own houses, and so on, is that some places, for example, require the netting form to be signed and somebody has to go into an office. Others require authorization of volumes of payments has to be signed again. And you've got a problem, don't you, in having to get your guys to upgrade the software, the version of your treasury management system. How are you doing that? Because it's becoming a major problem.
Well, let's go back to the things we can really handle. For example, the authorization of payments. Nobody needs to physically sign anything to process a payment. You can, at least in our world we're living in and we provide to our clients, you can authorize any payment from wherever you are using your cell phone, using your computer. The only thing you really require is an internet connection. And fortunately, the internet is not down. So there's no restriction in processing payments just because you're not able to go to the office or to meet or because you need a pen and a piece of paper. That's definitely not required anymore at all.
I'm afraid it is. I'm afraid it is. Now that's the problem. In SMEs, banks in the UK, the ACH, require SME to go in and sign a bit of paper. And in one of the Mid-Eastern countries, they have a netting. Netting is only allowed if you've signed a form. So I know it's outside of your system, but the world is more than just the infrastructure inside a TMS. And it's that linking of the old with the new, which is, I think there's a problem.
Yeah, you're right that there are, in terms of netting, there are some restrictions legally, which requires that you are going to sign a piece of paper and you get a stamp on it. Otherwise, the funds are not going to be transferred by the central bank, something like that. Yeah. So if this is the case and you are not able to get these stamps and you are required to sign something you cannot, then you have to change procedures. And changing procedures means you have to understand what the impact is going to be if you are going to change one or the other procedure in one or the other country. And to control this, again, we're going to come back to the very early point and the very first point, visibility. Visibility and active control. Are you able to actively access certain funds? If there is the technology available to do so, you should have implemented that. If it's not implemented, now it's time to implement this. We're going to get to limitations, definitely, yes, because in some countries it's legally still impossible to transfer funds out of the country. But if we can come down only to these exceptions, I think then we have covered 80 to 90% of our problems already. And in these times, to cover 80 to 90% of the problems would be a great achievement, I suppose.
You didn't answer the question about needing staff, BELLIN staff, to upgrade your system. Do you need to do that?
A little more than a year ago, we announced to our client base that we want to reduce the time traveling and the time required to be on site for implementation and consulting of all sorts. We assumed that we're going to get to a percentage of 50% of consultancy performance provided online and remote. We have exceeded that by far. For a couple of weeks now, we offer 100% remote implementation consulting, which I guess is going to be the standard in the future. Nobody needs to be on site to get a system up and running. Nobody needs to talk to the IT department to get a system up and running. So we can do that all from our home offices, from our remote places, and we can immediately help. Within a couple of hours, the system is up and running, and another couple of hours, the treasurer will see their balances and their global financial status. Nobody needs to be on site for that purpose.
Yes, in a way, you're saying that's perfect. It is, and that is the future, but we've still got this messy joining of the two different worlds, the physical and the digital, and it's going to take a while. Very interesting. What is your key takeaway? What's the key thing you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I guess Treasury will definitely not be the same after the crisis than it was before. The current situation is mainly causing liquidity problems, and solving liquidity problems is for sure forever the core competence of Treasury, and that leads to higher requirements addressing Treasury operations in the future and availability of information. To make a long story short, I believe that Treasury departments are going to have more responsibility in the future, are more focused in the future, are going to be recognized much better by the CFO, and coming along with that, need to be equipped with the right tools to be prepared for a case of emergency, for a case like the one we see right now.
So that would be your message to the CFO. What would be your message to the corporate treasurer?
We have to ensure that we have in Treasury the procedures, the transparency, the control, the reporting, the efficiency to be prepared for a case of emergency. Using a different picture, firefighters must be equipped for emergencies, even though they don't need all their tools every day. But in case something really badly happens, it is life-saving for everybody they can support. And I guess this applies to Treasury in the same way. If Treasury can block a fraudulent payment once in situations like now, if they can ensure that all salaries are paid in time because they have allocated their resources most efficiently, I believe the value of this department becomes very clear. And we as a treasurer or the treasurer themselves, they need to put procedures in place that they're capable to act even if there are limitations in the administration.
Very interesting. My final question would be, how do you expect corporate treasury departments to take up your admirable free offer of using TM5 to 3 modules, I think it is? How do you expect them to take that up? How are they going to use it?
I very much hope that they trust us, because this is important in the first place. If they trust us, they are going to just order it and we're going to start working on it. We don't charge for it. We just want to help. And if we only help to eventually save one single company, it has been worth putting this offer into the market. There's zero cost. There's just benefit for the corporate. It is not just saving a lot of money for them, it also helps to get through these difficult times. We just have said, we assume that the times are over end of June and we're going to get back in July to something we would consider normal. And that's why we have immediately put up that offer for that particular period. I hope that there are many people who have the courage to go further and to say, yes, we're going to try it because there's zero risk in it. And we're going to start implementing that with them together on a remote basis without any risk to them. And I know, and that's the biggest problem, CFOs are naturally hesitant to onboard any new technology, but in these very difficult times, they probably should reconsider that. And we think this unconventional offer of free access and free support can allow companies to set themselves up for success in the future as well.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. Unfortunately, though, leading experts saying that the crisis is going to go through to September 2021, at least.
Yeah, the crisis is going to last longer, but the emergency period is hopefully going to, or the extreme period is hopefully going to get to an end in June or July. And there we're going to have a longer phase to get back to normal. And that's going to last until September 21, I suppose. Yeah.
I love your optimism.
Yeah.
Right.
Without
Thank
that,
you.
I wouldn't be an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.